You're visiting Athens or the neighbouring Peloponnese and you want to be adventurous. Perhaps go off the beaten track where the tourist tours don't go, where the tourists don't visit, where perhaps you need a bike or a car. Well, these 9 places are just right for you. My first recommendation is the closest to Athens, only 20 kilometres from the centre, but also, ironically, the hardest to get to, and it's well worth it. These are the Davelis Caves on Pentelis mountain, and Pentelis is where the marble came from for the creation of the Acropolis and the Parthenon, and they used to quarry the marble here and roll it down the hill, and in the 5th century they were digging literally on this spot, taking marble out for the Parthenon, and they opened up this cave known as the Davelis Cave, and it's been a place of myth and legend ever since. I imagine it must have been scary when they uncovered it. They probably thought they'd opened up the gates of Hades. But subsequently, it's had all kinds of myth and legend associated with it. They used to worship Pan and the nymphs here. You can see there are 2 Byzantine churches, one built in the 9th century, one built in the 12th century. It was frequented by hermits, and in the late 70s and early 80s, the Greek military sectioned it off and did all sorts of unknown experimentation here. Some people say nuclear missiles, some people say paranormal. Who knows? But it's a hell of a climb to get up here. You need to go to Pentelis village, either on public transport or in a car, and park as far up Pentelis mountain as you can, and then walk. And it's a hike. Wear good shoes, bring water. It's about a 550-metre climb. It takes an hour and a half, 2 hours. The views are astonishing, and you won't see tourists up here. There are no guided tours up here. You have to come yourself. Bring a map, bring your phone, go for the Davelis Caves. I highly recommend it. It's worth it when you get there. Travel an hour and a half west of Athens into the Peloponnese, past Corinth and down towards Mykonos and Nafplio, very popular tourist destinations. You come to Argos, the only town on my list, where no one ever goes. And it's a terrible shame because you really should. There are 3 absolute must-sees here for me, which are well worth exploring. And if you want to get away from the tourists, yet again, you won't find them here. The first is Larissa Castle, up on the hill above Argos. To all intents and purposes, the castle appears to be a Byzantine castle, and indeed it was very important in the Byzantine period, famous siege here. But dig deeper. Within the walls you have Mycenaean and Roman construction, and then in the foundations you have ancient Mycenaean fortifications on this hill, dating from 1600 BC. So you've got 3,500 years here. And that's the point. That only takes you halfway back in the history of Argos, because Argos itself is the oldest settlement in Greece, possibly Europe, dating back some 7,500 years. There's a car park and a good road up to the castle, but do not follow Google Maps. It will take you to some totally strange place nearby, which leaves you isolated from where you want to go. Just follow the road signs and you'll be fine. Then look down the hill and you see some ruins down the bottom, and this perhaps is one of the saddest places I can advise you to visit, because there's so much here and it's not looked after. The sanctuary of Apollo and Athena, and when you drive back down the hill, go and look at this. It's an example of something that just isn't cared for, isn't looked after, and is just left to rot, and it's such a shame. But then you go across Argos to the base of Larissa Hill, the other side, and you come to these fantastic Roman ruins from the 3rd and 2nd centuries BC. You've got here the largest Roman Greek theatre in Greece, seated 20,000 people, if you look carefully, cut into the bedrock, and ranged in front of it then you've got this amazing Roman forum. So I'm not suggesting you go to Argos for the town, although the town's lovely, the people are fantastic and the centre's all right. I'm suggesting you go for the Roman and Mycenaean history. It's fantastic, and you'll be the only people there. While you're in this area, drive 15 minutes down the Argos-Nafplio road and you come to my stop number 3, ancient Tiryns. Now, you might get the odd tour here, but most people go to Mykonos. This was part of the Mycenaean Empire, dating back again 1600 years, but this was the port city. The sea used to be much closer to this site than it is now, perhaps a kilometre closer, and this was the port city of the Mycenaean civilization. This is what people saw when they came up the Argolidic Bay in their ships, this gleaming white edifice, this Acropolis here, and this is where Hercules lived and had his 12 labours set. It's an example of Cyclopean architecture. It's got everything going for it. No one comes and visits. It's well worth stopping off just for half an hour, 40 minutes, climb to the top and look at this amazing edifice that stood here for 3,500 years, and yet no one visits. Now, a lot of tourists will stop off in Nafplio, and rightly so. It's a great place to stop, stay overnight, etc. But then you go from Nafplio along the Nafplio Epidavros road towards ancient Epidavros, and along there you come across a sign to the ancient Mycenaean bridge. This is the Arkadiko Bridge, and this is the oldest bridge in the world. And yet, again, it's another place that no one stops. And yet it's so easy, particularly if you're in a car or on a bike or just exploring, to stop for 5 or 10 minutes and look at this bridge. But if you're a little bit more adventurous, you can actually go and see its twin, because it's well signposted from the first bridge. This bridge was built again, Mycenaean, 3,500 years ago. It's stood here for 3,500 years ago. But if you follow the signs up over the hill, it's about 1.5 kilometres walk. You have to have some confidence to do it. It gets a bit rugged, but there's a second one, and I think the second one's much better because it's not maintained in the same way. It's not as accessible. No one seems to know about it because no one can be bothered to go and see it. But if you're exploring Greece, why would you not stop off for 1 hour, look at both these bridges, the oldest bridges in the world? They're just amazing, and they're my number 4. Now, for my number 5, we're going to turn south, and we're going to drive about 2.5 hours, possibly even further, down to the Mani Peninsula. Just south of Aeropoli, you have the Diros Caves, and I would recommend these. If you're in the area, if you're exploring Kalamata, if you're exploring the Mani Peninsula, if you're going to Vathia, it's well worth going down into the Mani Peninsula and stopping at the Diros Caves. You need a couple of hours. It's reasonably well signposted. You can use Google Maps to get here. Great if you're on bikes, motorbikes, or pedal bikes, or in a car. But again, you won't get many tours coming down here because it's a bit out the way. But these caves are fantastic. There are about 14 kilometres of caves here, most of them still unexplored, and they're waterlogged. But the brilliant thing is you can go down into them, very cheap, very easy, and take a guided boat for about half an hour, 35 minutes, round these astonishing caves. And I would highly recommend it. The Mani Peninsula is beautiful anyway, and this is just a reason to go down there and explore. So, the Diros Caves near Aeropoli in the Mani Peninsula, my recommendation, number 5. My number 6 explorer's paradise is the Mani Peninsula in general. This peninsula to the south of the Peloponnese is undeveloped, rugged and beautiful. It's a hiker's paradise. It's a cyclist's paradise. It's perfect for exploring on a motorcycle or in a car. You will see very few tourists and very few coaches here. But I'm going to pick out a couple of places for you to perhaps aim for. The first is Vathia. This is a largely abandoned medieval village dating from the 14 or 1500s. And this village encapsulates the history of the Mani Peninsula. You have these fortified tower houses. There was no government down here. This place was lawless. This area was lawless. It was attacked continually by pirates from the sea. And it was ruled by families. And these families had these fortified enclaves like Vathia, where they built these fortified houses, and they basically lived here. Go 6 kilometres further down the road, south of Vathia, and you come to Tenaro, the end of the road, the most southerly point in mainland Greece. And this is interesting for a couple of reasons. Firstly, you have this amazing Hellenic temple here on this cliff, and this is to Poseidon, and it was the home of a death oracle. And why did you have a death oracle here? Because if you climb down into the cove below this temple, you have the gates to Hades. This is where the ancients thought that you could enter Hades from, where Severus, the three-headed dog, was guarding this entrance. And then, should you go the other way and walk along this cliff, it's about a 45-50 minute hike, not one for kids, a little bit risky, you come to a pharo or lighthouse, the most southerly point in mainland Greece, and just about the most southerly point in mainland continental Europe. A fantastic hike, a little bit blowy, but boy, it's worth coming out here. This is my number 6. Travel to the northeastern tip of the Mani Peninsula and you come to Githio, and just outside Githio, my number 7, the Dimitrios Shipwreck. This is worth stopping off at. If you're driving, let's say, past from Kalamata to Vathia, you will drive past here, and it's just a matter of turning off the main road down to this rather fantastic beach, I have to say, and exploring this shipwreck. It's been here since 1981, and it's believed the ship was used for transporting illegal cigarettes between Turkey and Italy, but it was abandoned, people think, when it was about to be boarded by customs, and it was allowed to drift and drifted onto this beach, and it's been here ever since. And I wouldn't recommend climbing in it. It's in a pretty perilous state nowadays, but if you're in the area and you like exploring, you should definitely stop off at this one. It's not something you see every day, and it's my number 7. For my number 8, we're going to go right across the Peloponnese now to the far west coast, and we're going to go to the Costa Navarino near Pylos. This is a fantastic area regardless. I mean, if you like beaches, if you like Greek life, if you want quality, if you want exploration, this is a place to come. Pylos itself, 2 castles, well worth exploring. But if you go over to the older castle, the one that was abandoned in the 1500s, you can either climb up to the castle and look down, or you can walk around the cliff base of the castle to Voidokilia Beach, which is one of the best beaches in Greece, and certainly, in my opinion, probably the best in the Peloponnese. It's fantastic, either to look down from the castle or just walk along the beachfront itself. You can drive here, you don't have to hike. There is a road that takes you around, and you can use your Google Maps to get there. But personally, I like walking, I like hiking, I like making life difficult for myself, and it's a good walk around to this beach. It's my number 8, and it's well worth stopping off at. Number 9, and the final destination on my list. If you drive north along the road from Voidokilia, past Kyprisia and up to Kalo Nero, you come to something called Zaharo Beach, and this is a 40-kilometre beach. And okay, Voidokilia is beautiful, and I've said probably the best beach in the Peloponnese, but this is the best beach for relaxing on in the Peloponnese. Because there's nothing here, there's no development, there are no big hotels, there are no big complexes, and you've got an amazing 40-kilometre sand beach, undisturbed, only really touched by the locals. You can drive along it, and there are little settlements along here, Kalo Nero, for example, Zaharo, and all the way along here there'll be little beach bars, there'll be little organised areas with umbrellas and sunbeds and so on, but no foreign tourists ever come here. You get a few RVs, that's it. So if you want somewhere to come and relax in Greece, you want a beach holiday, you don't want the hustle and bustle of Benidorm and the developments and the money and all of that, this is the place to come. My number 9 for explorers in Greece. Thank you.